have experienced, I guess, in my life, it's two occasions. I know the question asked for one, but I'm going to do one short and then talk about as an adult. As a child, I attended the schools here in the city of South Boston, and I was in the 6th grade, and at that time, that's when the story Roots was televised. At that time, I was on the field at C.H. Friends School playing with my friends. Never really understood there were racial boundaries until one of my Caucasian friends, called me the N-word. I knew by watching Roots that that word was hurtful and it was a bad word. And I began to cry, and then I struck out at him with my fist. When I was approached by my teacher never addressed that I was called the N-word. My teacher addressed the physical damage that I did to the young fellow. And so, in turn, I was sent to the principal's office. I was told that I was going to have a paddling, because at that time, I know I look young, but at that time they paddled. And my father was called, and then the situation was readily rectified. The second incident, it was just happened in January upon us moving here, and we hosted the Martin Luther King celebration at First Baptist Church. It wasn't really what I had planned. Moving back here after 20 years being away, living in different places, I thought coming back to my community that what I left, which was a community that I felt was totally equal, everyone was on one accord, was much divided. In that congregation of over 200 people, there was not one Caucasian person to celebrate the life and legacy of Martin Luther King at that church. I walked away thinking that we have work to do. We have work to do. Because it's not by invitation. When you know that that is an event that is annual, it shouldn't be by invitation. It should be a community coming together to celebrate the life and legacy of Dr. M.L. King. That's just one thing, and I want to pause because I know you want to get down to
Margaret, Melissa, do you have a comment? And before we go any further, since Reverend King was here a little late, we had some ground rules. I told the panelists, if you have a thought you'd like to share on the topic, don't feel compelled that you have to speak, but Melissa, give you a thought.
I had a very unique experience growing up because my father was in the military, and we moved very rarely because my mother hated moving. But we did move to 2 specific locations, and my parents did it for a reason. The first time that we moved the entire family, and not just my father, was when he was stationed in Oahu, Hawaii. And his specific reason, and he told us later on, his specific reason was because we would be attending a predominantly Pacific Asian community school, and we would be immediately influenced by and inspired by a different culture, one we had absolutely no familiarity with. I'm originally from Mockingbird, Virginia. And so for 2 years, I was steeped in the culture of the Polynesian Islands. And I was steeped in, we celebrated Nani Kalikimaka. We did sushi in school. We studied Hawaiian holidays, Hawaiian customs, the Hawaiian language. We went to luau's, we participated in luau's, and I learned to look at the world in a completely different way, a beautiful different way from the way that I ordinarily was used to looking at it. And then we moved when I was in 8th grade, and I felt it very keenly because we moved in the middle of the school year, so it was a January move, so you're starting a new school in the middle of the school year, and we moved to Highland Park, Illinois, which at that point in time was about 80% Jewish. In Williamsburg, Virginia, we did not get Jewish holidays off. If my friends were Jewish, I didn't know that. We don't go around saying, hi, I'm Melissa, and I'm a Catholic. So I didn't really know if I knew any Jews, but in Highland Park, it was such an ingrained part of that community that we did. It was a matter of course. Jewish holidays were off, Christian holidays were off. I went to bat mitzvahs, I went to bar mitzvahs. It was a whole different world. And of course, that meant, because it was predominantly a Jewish community, that they spoke to Jewish issues in the Jewish culture, and so we learned a lot in a very short amount of time while we were there for 18 months about the Holocaust and about the Jewish tradition of persecution and violence. And for an 8th grader who had never even realized that there were Jews in the world, that was eye-opening. And pretty frightening stuff.
Reverend King, would you like to discuss that?
Yes, I'm honored to be here today, distinguished panel, all of you who have come. When we talk about historical experiences in racism, I was, to give you some background, born in the city of Danville, Virginia, born in the 50s, and I went to all segregated school to the 7th grade. And we were integrated. I was in first integrated school, it was Woodrow Wilson, and then I went to another integrated school, which was Horse Integration. In 1963, I was in what is known as Oaksville, it's a kindergarten school. And in 63, after the first grade, after the Civil Rights Movement, some students went to the white school. And Dan, if you're familiar, there was a school called W.F. Grassley and another one called Stonewall Jackson. They both were elementary schools. When we were in elementary, the white school had buses to take the students home. The W.F. Grassley school never had buses the entire time we went to this school. And when we would get out, I lived in a predominantly white neighborhood as a kid. When we get out of school, we would have to walk home through the white neighborhoods. And sometimes we would make it to the Stonewall school and try to get on the bus. And when we get on the bus, we were met with terrible resistance. As we got on, they would say, we smell something. Blacks. They would spit on us. So we'd have to get off the bus. The bus that came from the high school, which was George Washington, was separated from George Washington and Langston and Oaksville, which was my kindergarten school. We were in the middle of two schools. George Washington bus would come, and because of the tension in our elementary school, the teachers would let us out early to try to catch the city transportation. Sometimes the high school bus would come first, and we would try to get on the bus, and it was just terrible. So we never had a bus. And during the this is later than '63, and even though integration had been ordered, the city of Danville did not move on integration. It was forced integration. We always remember that the city of Danville, it was forced to integrate in 1971 by building O.T. Bonham High School. And by living in a predominant white neighborhood, I had some young whites that I played with. And one thing that stuck in my, it sticks in my memory. We had woods behind our houses. And we would go and dig in the woods and dig tunnels. And one day I had this young white friend who was digging with me. And one day he came, he said, I can't dig in the tunnels with you anymore. And I said, why? He said, because my parents said I can't play with you anymore because of the color. Across the street from me was a family with 3 white males who lived across the street. And they would slip across the street and play with me. One day they were told not to come across the street. And one of the young men decided one day he would slip and play on the side of the house with us. When he crossed the street, his parents came and got him and brought him and beat him with a plank. And he never was able to play with us again. Finally, that family was driven from the community by the other neighbors because they had fraternized with African Americans or blacks or whatever you call them.
Excuse me, Reverend King. This is the tough part of my job, and I think it's going to get tougher as the night goes on. I've got some folks up here who have some compelling stories. They're eloquent spokespersons, and I hate interrupting you, but I want us to keep moving this discussion along. Otherwise, we're going to have one good question.
Okay.
So thank you.
Mr. Long,
Yes,
we
please.
need people to speak up also.
Would you? Okay.
Or move the
Okay.
microphone to the floor.
I can do that. Just pull the plate mics a little closer to you, and everyone else speak up.